My sister told her wealthy in-laws I was too embarrassed to meet. She hid me for 2 years like I was a shameful secret. Then her mother-in-law walked into the engagement party, looked straight at me and said 5 words that destroyed everything. "Dr. Hayes, what are you doing here?" Before I tell you exactly how my sister's perfect life unraveled in front of 200 guests, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. And if you've ever been treated like you weren't good enough by your own family, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This story is for you. Because sometimes, the people who underestimate you end up learning the hardest lessons. The champagne at the Riverside Ballroom tasted expensive. Everything at my sister Jessica's engagement party tasted expensive. The waiters wore white gloves. The flower arrangements probably cost more than my first car. And Jessica, my older sister by 3 years, stood in the center of it all like a queen holding court. She was showing off her engagement ring again. 2.5 carats and a platinum setting. Her fiancé Brandon had proposed on a beach in the Maldives. She'd told the story at least 20 times tonight. Each time my parents listened like it was the first time they'd heard it. They asked questions about the ring's clarity. They oohed over the proposal photos. They treated it like Jessica had discovered a cure for cancer instead of just finding a rich guy to marry. I stood near the bar holding a glass of red wine I wasn't really drinking. I was wearing a simple black dress. Nothing fancy. Jessica had specifically told me not to dress up too much. "Keep it low-key," she'd said on the phone 3 days ago. "Brandon's family is very traditional. I don't want you drawing attention." This wasn't new. For the past 2 years since Jessica started dating Brandon Montgomery, I'd been slowly erased from her life. First, I wasn't invited to family dinners when the Montgomerys were there. Then I wasn't in the photos she posted on social media. Then she stopped mentioning me entirely. When I asked her about it once, she laughed it off. "You wouldn't fit in with Brandon's crowd, Mia. They're very refined. You know how you are. Awkward and too serious. They wouldn't get your humor." What she really meant was, "You're not impressive enough." See, in Jessica's world, I was the boring little sister. The one who spent too much time studying. The one who didn't have a glamorous job or a rich boyfriend. I was just Mia, the quiet and forgettable one. My parents saw me the same way. When people asked them about their daughters, they'd light up talking about Jessica. "Oh, Jessica works in marketing for a boutique firm. She's engaged to Brandon Montgomery." Yes, those Montgomerys. The real estate family. They're very well connected. Then they'd mention me as an afterthought. "And Mia works in healthcare. Research, I think. Something with medicine. Something with medicine." That was how they described my job. Tonight was supposed to be Jessica's big moment. The engagement party was her chance to show off for the Montgomerys. Brandon's parents, Harrison and Catherine Montgomery, were the kind of people who summered in Martha's Vineyard and wintered in Aspen. They owned half the commercial real estate in the city. They moved in circles where people had Roman numerals after their names. And I was the embarrassing sister who had to be hidden away. I watched Jessica laugh with a group of Brandon's relatives. She looked perfect. Hair professionally styled. Makeup flawless. Designer dress that probably cost 3 months of rent. She fit in with them completely. She belonged. I took another sip of wine. It didn't taste expensive anymore. It just tasted bitter. Then the door to the ballroom opened. A man in his 60s walked in looking flustered and apologetic. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit. I recognized him immediately from Jessica's endless Instagram posts. Harrison Montgomery. Brandon's father. "Sorry we're late," Harrison said loudly, making his way through the crowd. "Catherine's flight from Boston was delayed. She just landed 20 minutes ago. She's parking the car." My mother rushed over to greet him, gushing about how wonderful it was to finally meet him in person. My father shook his hand like he was meeting royalty. Jessica looked relieved, smoothing down her dress and checking her hair in a compact mirror. Everything was going according to plan. Then Catherine Montgomery walked in. She was a small woman, maybe 5'3", with perfectly styled gray hair and the kind of presence that made people stop talking. She wore a navy blue dress and pearls. Real pearls. The kind that cost more than a car. She scanned the room looking for her son. Her eyes passed over my parents, over Jessica, over the crowd of guests. And then her eyes landed on me. She stopped walking. Her mouth opened slightly. Her perfectly composed expression cracked. "Dr. Hayes," she said, her voice cutting through the noise of the party. "Dr. Mia Hayes?" The room went silent. Every head turned to look at me. Jessica's smile froze on her face like someone had hit pause on a video. I set down my wine glass. My hand was steady. "Mrs. Montgomery," I said calmly. "It's good to see you again." Catherine Montgomery crossed the room in 5 quick steps. She didn't walk. She marched. And when she reached me, she pulled me into a hug. "Oh my God," she breathed. "I can't believe you're here. Harrison, come here. It's Dr. Hayes. Dr. Hayes." Harrison Montgomery's eyes went wide. He hurried over, his face breaking into a huge smile. "Mia? Little Mia Hayes? From St. Mary's." "That's me," I said. Catherine grabbed my hands. Her eyes were actually wet with tears. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You saved my actual life." The silence in the ballroom was so complete I could hear someone's phone buzz across the room. Jessica stood frozen, her champagne glass tilted at a dangerous angle in her hand. My mother looked confused, her head swiveling between me and Catherine Montgomery like she was watching a tennis match. My father's mouth hung open. Brandon pushed through the crowd, looking between his mother and me with total confusion. "Mom? You know Mia?" "Yo her," Catherine said, laughing through tears. "Brandon, this is Dr. Mia Hayes. She's the oncologist who diagnosed my breast cancer. She's the one who caught it early. Stage 1. If it wasn't for her, I would have waited another year for my mammogram. I would have." Her voice broke. "I wouldn't be here." The words landed like bombs. Oncologist. Breast cancer. Saved her life. Jessica's face went completely white. I should explain. 3 years ago I wasn't Dr. Mia Hayes. I was just Mia Hayes, finishing my residency at St. Mary's Hospital. I was working brutal hours, barely sleeping, living on coffee and vending machine food. I was invisible to most people. Just another resident in scrubs, running between patient rooms. Catherine Montgomery came in for a routine checkup. She was seeing another doctor, but he was running late, so I did her initial exam. I felt a lump. Small. Almost nothing. She hadn't even noticed it. I ordered additional tests. A biopsy. An ultrasound. I pushed for answers when the other doctor wanted to wait and see. I fought with the hospital administration to get her an emergency appointment with a specialist. The lump was cancerous. Stage 1. Caught early because I refused to let it go. Catherine had surgery. Clean margins. No chemo needed. Just radiation and hormone therapy. She was declared cancer-free 18 months ago. I remembered her thank you note. It was handwritten on expensive stationery. She'd written 3 pages about how I'd given her more time with her family. How I'd saved her from her own procrastination. How she'd never forget me. I didn't think I'd ever see her again. And I definitely didn't know she was Brandon Montgomery's mother. Now, standing in the middle of Jessica's engagement party, Catherine Montgomery was holding my hands and crying. Harrison stood next to her, looking at me with something close to reverence. "You're a doctor?" my mother said faintly, her voice barely audible. "I'm an oncologist," I corrected gently. "I completed my residency 2 years ago. I'm currently on staff at St. Mary's Hospital. I specialize in breast cancer treatment and early detection." "But you said you worked in healthcare," my father said, sounding confused and defensive. "You said research." "I do research," I said. "I also treat patients. I run a clinic. I teach medical students. But yes, I work in healthcare." Jessica finally found her voice. Came out strangled and thin. "You're a doctor? An actual medical doctor?" "Yes," I said simply. "Since when?" "Since I graduated from medical school 7 years ago," I said. "And finished my residency 2 years ago." Brandon looked at Jessica. "Wait. You didn't know your sister is a doctor?" Jessica opened her mouth. I closed it. I opened it again. No sound came out. Catherine was still holding my hands. "Mia, I had no idea you were Jessica's sister. She never mentioned you. We've been planning this engagement for months and she never said a word." "I asked her not to," Jessica said quickly, her voice desperate and high-pitched. "I didn't want to bother Dr. Hayes. He's so busy. I didn't think she'd have time to come." It was a lie. A clumsy, obvious lie. Catherine's expression shifted. She looked at Jessica with something cold in her eyes. "You didn't think your sister, the woman who saved my life, would have time to come to your engagement party?" Jessica stammered. She told us she didn't want us to meet Mia, Harrison said, his voice flat. She said Mia was. He paused, clearly trying to remember the exact words. She said Mia was not really family-oriented, and that she wouldn't fit in with our social circle. My mother gasped. Audibly. Jessica's face went from white to red. I didn't mean it like that. She also told us Mia worked as a nurse's assistant, Brandon said slowly, realization dawning on his face. She said you couldn't get into medical school. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I looked at Jessica. Really looked at her. She was shaking. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide how terrified she looked. Why? I asked softly. Why would you lie about me? She didn't answer. Catherine answered for her. Because she was embarrassed, she said, her voice sharp as glass. She wanted us to think she came from a certain kind of family. Successful. Wealthy. Connected. She didn't want us to know her little sister was more accomplished than she was. That's not true, Jessica protested weakly. Isn't it? Catherine said. You've been playing a role for 2 years, Jessica. The perfect daughter from the perfect family. But you lied. About your sister. About your background. What else did you lie about? Brandon was staring at Jessica like he'd never seen her before. Jess, he said quietly. What's going on? Nothing, she said desperately. I just didn't think it mattered. Mia and I aren't that close. I didn't think. You didn't think we'd find out, Harrison finished. His voice wasn't angry. I was disappointed. Somehow that was worse. My father finally spoke up, his voice shaky. Mia, why didn't you tell us you were a doctor? I turned to look at him. He looked genuinely confused, like he couldn't understand how this had happened. I did tell you, I said calmly. I told you when I got into medical school. I told you when I graduated. I told you when I started my residency. I invited you to my white coat ceremony. None of you came. You said it wasn't important. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. You told me you were busy that day, I continued, my voice steady. You said you had to help Jessica move into her new apartment. You said we'd celebrate later. We never did. But, my father started. I sent you updates, I said. Every major milestone. Every achievement. You didn't respond. You didn't ask questions. You didn't care. Because Jessica was doing something you understood. Marketing. Parties. Engagement rings. That made sense to you. But medicine, research, saving lives. That was just something with health care. My mother started crying. Real tears, not the delicate kind Jessica could produce on command. Jessica looked around the room like a trapped animal. Every face was staring at her. Her perfect party was falling apart. Catherine Montgomery let go of my hands and took a step back. She looked at Jessica with the kind of expression that could cut steel. I need some air, she said. Harrison, could you join me? It wasn't a request. They walked out of the ballroom together. Brandon hesitated, looked at Jessica, then followed his parents. The moment they left, the room erupted in whispers. Guests leaned toward each other, murmuring behind champagne glasses. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. Jessica grabbed my arm. Hard. Mia, she hissed. You need to fix this. I pulled my arm away. Fix what? This, she said, gesturing wildly. You need to tell them I didn't mean it. You need to tell them we're close. You need to lie. I said. You want me to lie for you? Please, she begged. Her voice cracked. They're going to cancel the wedding. Catherine already hates me. If you don't help me. Why would I help you? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried. You've spent 2 years pretending I don't exist. You told Brandon's family I was too embarrassed to meet. You said I was a nurse's assistant who couldn't get into medical school. You made me sound like a failure. I didn't mean it like that, she said desperately. Yes, you did, I said. You've always thought I was less than you. Boring. Awkward. Not good enough. You've treated me like I was something to be ashamed of since we were kids. And when you met Brandon and his family, you saw a chance to create a perfect version of yourself. A version that didn't include me. That's not fair, she said, tears running down her face now. Real tears. Isn't it? I said. Think about it, Jessica. Every family dinner. Every holiday. Every celebration. When did you ever ask about my life? When did you ever ask about my work? When did you ever care about anything I did? She didn't answer. My parents stood frozen a few feet away. My father looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. My mother was still crying. Mia, my mother said finally. We didn't know. We didn't realize. You didn't ask, I said simply. For 7 years you didn't ask. I stopped trying to tell you because you made it clear you didn't want to hear it. Jessica was your success story. I was just there. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne. I took a glass. I needed something to do with my hands. You can't let them cancel the wedding, Jessica said again, her voice rising. Mia, please. I love Brandon. I love his family. I can't lose this. You should have thought about that before you lied, I said. I'm your sister, she said, grabbing my hand. Please. I'm begging you. I looked down at her hand gripping mine. I thought about all the times I'd needed her. All the times I'd wanted her support. All the times I'd been invisible. You're my sister, I said slowly. But you never treated me like one. I pulled my hand away. Brandon came back into the ballroom. His face was serious. He walked straight to Jessica. We need to talk, he said quietly. Outside. Jessica looked at me one more time. Her eyes were desperate. Pleading. I didn't say anything. She followed Brandon out of the ballroom. The moment they left, people started approaching me. Brandon's relatives. Friends of the family. They all wanted to know about my work. They asked about St. Mary's. They asked about cancer research. They asked intelligent questions that showed they actually cared. For the first time all night I felt visible. My parents stood awkwardly on the edge of the crowd. They didn't approach. They just watched. After about 20 minutes, Catherine and Harrison came back in. They walked straight to me. Mia, Catherine said. Could we talk? Privately. I followed them to a small sitting room off the main ballroom. Harrison closed the door. Catherine sat down heavily in a chair. She looked tired suddenly. Older. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry we didn't know who you were. I'm sorry Jessica felt the need to hide you from us. It's not your fault, I said. I feel responsible, she said. We pride ourselves on being good judges of character. But we didn't see this. We didn't see that Jessica was lying to us. Harrison cleared his throat. Brandon wants to postpone the wedding, he said. Not cancel it. Just postpone. He says he needs time to figure out who Jessica really is. I nodded. That seemed fair. We wanted to ask you something, Catherine said. And please feel free to say no. But. She paused. Would you be willing to have dinner with us? Just us. No Jessica. No wedding planning. We'd like to know you. The real you. I was surprised. Really? Really, Harrison said. Catherine talks about you constantly. She calls you her guardian angel. We'd like to get to know the woman who saved her life. Something tight in my chest loosened. I'd like that, I said. Catherine smiled. It was warm. Genuine. Good, she said. Because I've been wanting to introduce you to some colleagues of mine. I sit on the board of the Collins Cancer Foundation. We're always looking for talented oncologists to support. The Collins Foundation? I said. That's one of the biggest cancer research funders in the country. It is, she said. And they'd be lucky to have you. I left the engagement party an hour later. I didn't say goodbye to Jessica. I didn't say goodbye to my parents. I just slipped out quietly. The night air was cold. I stood in the parking lot for a moment, breathing. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We need to talk. Please call me. I deleted it. Another text from Jessica. You ruined my life. I hope you're happy. I stared at that one for a long time. Then I typed back. I didn't ruin your life. I just stopped letting you erase mine. I hit send and blocked her number. 3 days later, I had dinner with Catherine and Harrison Montgomery at an expensive Italian restaurant downtown. We talked for 3 hours. They asked about my research. They asked about my patients. They asked about my goals. They listened. 2 weeks after that, Catherine introduced me to the board of the Collins Cancer Foundation. They offered me a research grant. $50,000 to study early detection methods in high-risk patients. It was the biggest grant I'd ever received. A month later, Brandon called off the engagement. He said he couldn't trust Jessica anymore. He said he couldn't marry someone who was ashamed of her own family. Jessica moved back in with my parents. He stopped posting on social media. He stopped going to parties. My parents called me once. My father left a voicemail. He said they were sorry. He said they wanted to make things right. I didn't call back. Some people think I should forgive them. Some people think I was too harsh. They say family is family and you should always give people second chances. But here's what I learned. You can't give someone a second chance if they never respected you in the first place. For years I was invisible to them. I was the boring sister. The forgettable daughter. The one who didn't matter. And then in one single moment, everything changed. Not because I did anything differently. Not because I suddenly became someone worth noticing. But because someone else saw my value. Someone else recognized who I really was. And that's the thing about being underestimated. The people who underestimate you aren't usually cruel. They're just blind. They see what they want to see. They create a story about who you are, and they refuse to see anything that doesn't fit that story. Jessica needed me to be less than her. My parents needed me to be the simple one, the easy one, the one who didn't require much attention. But I was never simple. It was never easy. I was never less. I was just invisible. And the moment I became visible, really visible, everything fell apart for them. 6 months after the engagement party, Catherine Montgomery hosted a fundraising gala for the Collins Cancer Foundation. She invited me as a guest of honor. I wore a red dress. My parents weren't invited. Jessica wasn't invited. But I was. I stood on stage and gave a speech about early cancer detection. 200 people listened. They applauded. When I walked off stage, Catherine hugged me. "I'm so proud of you," she said. No one in my family had ever said that to me before. I realized something that night. I'd spent my whole life waiting for my family to see me. Waiting for them to be proud. Waiting for them to notice. But I didn't need them to see me anymore. I could see myself. And that was enough. People ask me if I regret what happened at Jessica's engagement party. They ask if I feel guilty for not helping her. I don't. Because I didn't ruin her engagement. She did. He chose to lie. She chose to hide me. She chose to be ashamed of her own sister. All I did was exist. All I did was be exactly who I always was. And that was enough to destroy the perfect life she'd built on lies. Sometimes the best revenge isn't something you plan. It's not something you scheme about in the dark. Sometimes the best revenge is just being yourself. Loudly and proudly. Without apology. And letting everyone else deal with the consequences. If you've ever been treated like you weren't enough by people who should have loved you, drop a comment and let me know your story. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe because I share stories like this every week. Stories about people who were underestimated, overlooked and written off, until they weren't. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.